finished last week that Felix came, verse 27, and after 2 years, Porcius Festus came unto Felix's room, and Felix, willing to show the Jews a pleasure, left Paul bound. And we know that that was kind of illegal, but no one was going to argue with the governor because Paul was a Roman citizen. He had not yet been convicted of anything. So we start in chapter 25, and let's see. Okay, someone read verses 1 through 6.
Now when Festus was come unto the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul, and besought him, and desired favor against him, that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me, and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought.
Okay. What was the ultimate goal of these Jews?
Killing?
Yeah, to kill Paul. And they've tried several different times. They tried to get the chief captain to bring him out so they could kill him, and that didn't work. And then they went to Felix and tried to get him to send him down, and that didn't work. Now Festus is there. They're trying to convince him to bring him down so they can kill him. And in each case, what did God do? He protected him. They all said, no, let's go up there, and if you want to accuse him, come on. Now we don't know what he did during those 10 days. It's up, you can pick up what you think he might have done. Verse 6, he tarried among them more than 10 days. What did Festus know that Felix didn't? What was his position? If I read right, he was a new governor. So they're trying everything they can to get Paul down into their area, because they had, what was it? I can't remember the number, 40-something men, 46, 40-something.
That were doing without food.
Yeah, it took them out. They wouldn't eat or drink anything until they killed Paul. So he said, no, that ain't going to happen. We'll keep him where he is, but if you want to accuse him, you can go on up there and accuse him, and I'll go up with you. Now, it says verse 6, he tarried with them more than 10 days. Don't know what he was doing, unless maybe, pure supposition, as a new governor, he was enjoying the being put on the throne. Maybe they were having parties. We don't know. The Bible doesn't say. But maybe he was trying to find out who would grease his palms, so to speak. Because we know that happened a lot during this time. We were just read that Felix was hoping to get money to release Paul. So that was a common activity during this time. Maybe. We don't know. So let's go on. 7. Let's see. 7 through 11. Someone please?
And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about, and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar have I offended anything at all. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem, and there be judge of these things before me? Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender, or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar.
Okay. We're in Acts chapter 25 and just finished verse 11. So, what does Paul know in his mind? What is going on here?
Well, knowing that he's a citizen of Rome,
Okay.
that when he appeals to Caesar, then the Jews can't touch him.
Yeah, he won't be released back to Jerusalem. What else? Go back a couple chapters. What did his nephew tell him?
That's for a man trying to kill him.
Yeah, there's 40-something guys taking an oath. They're going to kill you. So here we have the new governor, Festus, saying, are you scared to go down to Jerusalem? Paul said, no. You know, if I did something worthy of death, then I don't mind the punishment. But he said, I haven't done anything wrong, and I ain't going down to Jerusalem. So he said, I'm appealing to Caesar. Now, once he did that, that pretty well sealed the fact that he is now going to be going to Rome, to Caesar. Now we're going to see some other things going on, because how could we equate to that? If you're being accused of something, and you get arrested for, I don't know, pick an offense. You're arrested for DWI. And the officer said, yeah, you were staggering, you had bloodshot eyes, and writes this big report up. And the prosecutor says, okay, what was his blood alcohol content? Oh, well, it was 0.000000. The prosecutor would say, wait a minute. You're accusing him and you have no proof, no evidence. So that's what's going on here, or what we're going to see is going to go on in just a minute. But here Paul says, no, not going to Jerusalem. If I'm going to be judged, I'll be judged by Caesar himself. So, okay, what happens? Someone read verse 12.
Then Festus, I'm looking for verse 11. Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar thou shalt go.
Yep. So, the council, we're not told exactly who they are, but who did he bring up with him? He brought the Jewish leaders. Now, he had to have had, being the governor, there had to be some people that helped him, wise men, scholars who helped him with decisions, I would assume. Most did. So he conferred with his people, it says with the council. Now I bet the Jews that were there said, no, you can't do that. We want him back in Jerusalem. But he said, no, that's not how it works. And then he said, came back, Paul, you appealed to Caesar, you're going. Now, that kinda is what God told Paul. He said, you go to Jerusalem, I'm gonna send you to Rome. So he's now getting ready to go. 13 through, let me see. Well, we'll break this down. 13 through 16.
And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, there is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. To whom I answered, it is not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him.
Okay, was that right? Was he telling the truth? No, he wasn't. Pam said, yeah, no, he wasn't. What did he just tell Paul?
Oh, sorry.
He just got done telling Paul, you willing to go to Jerusalem and be judged down there? Now what's he telling the king? Oh, I couldn't have sent him to Jerusalem because flip-flop. Now, I couldn't do that, and now we're talking the king is there and his wife. And we don't know again how long he was there, but the governor said, hey, I've got a certain man, and my predecessor, Felix, he left him in bonds. And I would, the Jews wanted me to send him down, but I answered, no, can't do it, because the Romans can't deliver any man to die before he's accused and has a chance basically to have a trial and be found guilty. So what did that tell you about Festus? What did he know?
Evidently, if he had requested Caesar, he had to send him there.
That's true. But now he's talking to the governor, to the king. He's changed his story a little. And what does he tell him about Paul? Had he sent him? Well, I thought it'd be easy.
Well, he's telling him that the chief priests and the elders are the ones. Is that what you're asking?
Verse 16.
Just reminding them that the Romans don't execute someone until it's at a trial.
Yeah.
That's just what he's
We're Romans, we don't do that. But what he's saying is, he knew that Jerusalem, they were going to execute him. There wouldn't have been a trial, they just would have killed him. And he's saying, oh, I couldn't have sent him to Jerusalem because they would have killed him without a trial. Yet, just a few days before that, he said, hey, Paul, you willing to go to Jerusalem and be tried? He knew what was going to happen. Sometimes people say one thing to one person and another thing to another person. because they don't want to get in trouble.
And they get in trouble.
Yeah. So he said, no, I didn't want to send him down. He's a Roman. So then let's see what else he says. Verse 17 through... Let's go, we'll break it down. 17 through 20.
Therefore, when they were come hither, without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat, and commanded the man to be brought forth. Against whom, when the accuser stood up, they brought none accusation of such things as I supposed, but had certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus, which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem, and there be judged of these matters.
Yeah. Well, you know, I really did talk to him, and I asked, do you really want to, you go to Jerusalem and be judged?
Yeah, he said,
Yeah, now, well, maybe the king knew a little more than that. So he said, well, I kind of really did say you want to go down and be judged by the Jews. And then he gives his answer, 21 through... Well, let's see. We'll break this down. 21, 22, and 23.
But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. When Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, thou shalt hear of him. And on the morrow, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice with great pomp, and was entered into the place of hearing with the chief captains and principal men of the city, as Festus' commandment, Paul was brought forth.
Okay, so he's saying, well, I want to hear him too. And he must have really enjoyed being the king. Because he came in with what?
Pomp.
Great pomp. Oh, the people, I don't know how it worked, but I bet that there was people that came waves and waves before the king, and then the king shows up. And who all's there? The great men of the city, all the leaders. And he shows up, here I am. It's kind of like one of the people that shows up at our meetings and tends to be late so that everybody knows he's there. Well, here's the king, comes in, probably absolute last, and with his wife. And you know they had to have been decked out in all their kingly and queenly apparel and garb. And he goes right up and sits down on the judgment seat, on the throne. He says, okay, now, bring Paul up. I want to listen to him. (24 through 27).
And Festus said, King Agrippa, and all men which are here present with us, ye see this man, about whom all the multitude of the Jews have dealt with me, both at Jerusalem and also here, crying that he ought not to live any longer. But when I found that he had committed nothing worthy of death, and that he himself hath appealed to Augustus, I have determined to send him, of whom I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord. Wherefore I have brought him forth before you, and especially before thee, O King Agrippa, that after examination had, I might have somewhat to write. For it seemeth to me unreasonable to send a prisoner, and not withal to signify the crimes laid against him. What a speech.
Yeah. Who was the one that wanted to listen to Paul?
Agrippa.
Agrippa. So what's Felix said? Well, I brought him forth just so you could listen to him. Is that what happened?
No.
Okay, Agrippa said, I want to hear him. Oh, okay. Well, I brought him forth, but I need your help. Because he appealed to Caesar. And I can't write a letter of accusation because they know crimes that he committed. So I'd like you to listen to him and you determine what crimes he's committed let me know so I can write Caesar all the crimes he's done worthy of death. That's basically what he said. Is that true? Nah. But that's what happened. He's a great orator. We have some of those around here too. Make great speeches. But what I was saying, Festus had a problem. His problem is in verse 26. I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord, or unto Caesar. Wherefore I brought him to you, so you could give me something to write about. What should have Festus done?
Well, if there was no proof or anything, he should have released Paul.
You got it. Festus should have just released him. There's no crime you committed. It's an internal Jewish matter. We don't deal with that as Romans. Paul, you're free. But he didn't. Now, even though Paul appealed to Caesar, I would bet that he probably still could have released him. Or if he couldn't, the king could have released him. And he could just say, hey, we need to release him. And the king, remember, kings had absolute authority at that point. He could kill anybody just by saying, kill him. There was no appeal to a decree of the king, just as there was no appeal to the decree of Caesar Augustus. So he didn't go that route. So now Paul gets to talk. I don't know we got enough time, but we're going to try. Chapter 26.
I'm glad that wasn't to be continued again.
Well, it might.
Stop right in the middle of Paul's.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. We have to break this down because that's a long speech.
But we gotta hurry,
Why?
because you're gonna stop in the middle.
Yeah, I am. I already told you I am. Unless you want to read the whole thing. You want to read the whole thing?
Do whatever, if you don't, I'll finish it tomorrow. If you don't.
Okay, verses 1 through 7, someone. And you haven't read Pam.
So you're someone.
Hello, Grandpa.
Is that you getting him?
Thou art permitted to speak for thyself. Then Paul stretched forth the hand and answered for himself. I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because I shall answer for myself this day before thee, touching all the things whereof I am accused of the Jews, especially because I know thee to be expert in all customs and questions which are among the Jews, wherefore I beseech thee to hear me patiently. My manner of life from my youth, which was the first among my own nation at Jerusalem, know all the Jews, which knew me from the beginning, if they would testify that after the most straightest sect of our religion I lived a Pharisee. And I stand and am judged for the hope of the promise made of God unto our fathers.
Keep going.
Unto which promise our 12 tribes, instantly serving God day and night, hope to come, for which hope's sake, King Agrippa, I am accused of the Jews.
Okay, what do we know now about King Agrippa?
He's an expert on Jewish traditions
Yeah.
and law.
He was well-knowledged, well-versed on the tradition of the Jews. So he knew what the Sadducees believed. He knew what the Pharisees believed. He probably knew what was going on with Paul too. And so now Paul is talking to him and basically said, King Agrippa, I know that you know what I'm about to say. So you know I'm not lying to you, is basically what he says. Okay. 8 through 13.
Why should it be thought a thing incredible with you that God should raise the dead? I verily thought with myself that I ought to do many things contrary to the name of Jesus of Nazareth, which thing I also did in Jerusalem, and many of the saints did I shut up in prison, having received authority from the chief priests, and when they were put to death, I gave my voice against them. And I punished them all in every synagogue, and compelled them to blaspheme, and being exceedingly mad against them, I persecuted them even unto strange cities. How far?
13.
Whereupon, as I went to Damascus with authority and commission from the chief priest, at midday, O king, I saw in the way a light from heaven above the brightness of the sun, shining round about me and them that journeyed with me.
Okay, and again, King Agrippa knew a lot about Jewish tradition and beliefs. And we know that Paul's reputation went before him. And we know that, reading the book of Acts, people would hear where he was and would flock to it to try to get him killed or try to stone him. And that others knew who he was before he came. Remember when Jesus met Paul on the road to Damascus, and Jesus said to him, I want you to go visit this person. And my brain just went, who was the disciple? I can't remember. Well, anyway. What did the man say to the Lord?
I'm scared of this man.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm scared of this man.
Are you really wanting me to talk to Paul, who's arrested all these Christians, who's had them murdered and had them, punished? You really want me to talk to him?
Ananias.
That's right. Thank you.
But anyway, I don't think we know anywhere how many Paul had executed, because he says here that he pursued several and had them executed.
Yeah, and he consented. We know that I believe he started by holding the coats of those that stoned Stephen as a young man, and then it just progressed into where he had the authority to do it by himself. So I don't think he's telling the king anything that he didn't already know. But now he's going to go in and share what the Lord told him. So in verses...
So Agrippa was a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the Jewish king, and Rome allowed some of their countries they conquered to have their own structure, as long as they still gave deference to Caesar. But then Festus, being the governor of the region, he wanted to appease Agrippa, but Festus didn't owe anything to Agrippa, but he was trying to get him to do a favor here for him. And actually, I just discovered Bernice was his sister.
Oh, I thought it was his wife.
Yeah, I always thought that too. I just looking that up.
Okay, thank you. Learned something new.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting in verse 14 through 18. No. Yeah, 14 through 18.
And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me, and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And I said, Who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. But rise and stand upon thy feet, for I have appeared unto thee for this purpose, to make thee a minister and a witness both of these things which thou hast seen, and of those things in which I will appear, in which I will appear unto thee, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes, and to turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which were sanctified by faith that is in me.
So Paul is now talking to the king, and he's sharing
Oh, jeez.
what the interaction basically he had with Christ.
Right.
And
But
keep it,
and he already, I'm sorry, but whenever he said, "Who art thou, Lord?" he already knew who it was.
no, he didn't. He,
When he heard his voice, he didn't know.
But I wonder why
remember,
why he would say, "Who art thou, Lord?"
Just
well,
like Festus said Lord, he was referring to Caesar.
Right,
Or
okay.
simply someone who
Just
was
like a
over
title,
you.
but
I
he wasn't
think-
necessarily saying
I
Jesus.
think you may have not been here that week that we went over it.
Me and you have both been called out.
But what happened if you read the story, the word Lord is there twice, but the first one is the Greek word used for respect
Okay,
for the king. It's really, if I were to translate it, I'd say the first is, who are you, sir? And then when Jesus said, I am Jesus of Nazareth, then he uses the Greek word,
then
you
he
are
actually
Lord.
knew. Okay,
So
Okay.
this one here is the Greek where who are you, sir?
right,
Because they called the king Lord, Caesar Lord, but that didn't mean they were God.
Right.
And I use the illustration because I like Robin Hood. How do you refer to the person that owns the castle?
The Lord,
Lord of the castle.
Right.
The Lord of the castle.
the Lord.
okay.
So the Greek, it's a good translation, Lord, but what it really means, the first one is
A title,
highly respected,
like-
sir.
Right, yes, okay.
And then when Jesus says who he is, then he says, oh, you're the Lord.
Because we don't have as many descriptive words in English
Yeah.
as they had in Greek. So just like Sunday, whatever word I was talking about, it has a bunch of meanings for us in English. Blessed has a bunch of meanings for us in English. But that's why it's used so much, is because it's used to translate a couple different Greek words. Because we don't have as much of a wide variety of words as they did in Greek.
Okay, 19 through 23.
Whereupon, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient unto the heavenly vision, but showed first unto them of Damascus, and at Jerusalem, and throughout all the coasts of Judea, and then to the Gentiles, that they should repent and turn to God, and do works meet for repentance. For these causes the Jews caught me in the temple, and were about to kill me. Having therefore obtained help of God, I continued unto this day, witnessing both to small and great, saying none other things than those which the prophet and Moses did say should come, that Christ should suffer, and that he should be the first that should rise from the dead, and should show light unto the people and to the Gentiles.
And remember, Jews didn't like that word Gentile. And when Paul used it earlier, if you remember, when the chief captain took him and allowed him to speak, when he used that word, that was it. They went nuts, yelling and screaming. So he brought him back into the castle. Well, Paul now is sharing that, God told me to preach to all the people, including the Gentiles. He started with the Jews, showed where he went around, and then he moved over, and now he's talking to the Gentiles. When he says that word, then we see what happens, verse 24 through 26. Go ahead.
And as he thus spake for himself, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, thou art soberness. For the king knoweth of these things, before whom also I speak freely, for I am persuaded
Mhm.
that none of these things are hidden from him, for his thing was not done in a corner.
Yeah. He said, hey, Festus, I have been open and honest. I haven't done anything secretly. Haven't tried to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. It's been right out and open. And by the way, the king knows what I'm talking about. Which leads me to believe he knew of Paul. And he knew of what he had heard about Paul. Now, more than likely, he didn't hear much good about Paul. He heard a lot of bad. But he was inquisitive. He wanted to hear what Paul said for himself. And so he did. So, 27 through 32, and we can finish the chapter.
King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? I know that thou believest. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that not only thou, but also all that hear me this day were both almost and altogether such as I am, except these bonds. And when he had thus spoken, the king rose up, and the governor, and Bernice, and they that sat with them. And when they were gone aside, they talked between themselves, saying, this man doeth nothing worthy of death or of bonds. Then said Agrippa unto Festus, this man might have been set at liberty, if he had not appealed unto Caesar.
Okay. There's a couple different ways you can look at Agrippa's response. One of those ways is to say, you know, Paul, you almost convicted me to become a Christian. But the word is almost.
Yeah, that's sad.
That means he didn't receive Christ. The other way to look at what King Agrippa said is in a more sarcastic way, which would be saying something to the effect, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian? Was that a good term? Christian? No, it was a derogatory term. Yeah, they were first called Christians at Antioch. That's kind of like, some of you are too young for this, but we had a gentleman from Korea said he was Christ. His name was Reverend Sun Moon. Mm-hmm. You know what we called his followers?
Moonies.
Moonies. Was that a good term?
No, we were making fun of them.
Yeah.
I only have heard that from.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I heard it a
the name
lot.
Baptist, the origins of the name Baptist.
Yeah.
First Anabaptists, the rebaptizers.
Yeah. The Catholics, the Roman Catholics first called us Anabaptists because if you go back to history, every child that was born to Roman parents had to be baptized, sprinkled, and that brought them into Roman citizenship. But if you remember what I've said a long time ago, that was one of their ways to bring in money. Every baby born, you had to pay money to the priest. The second way they brought in money was through confessional. You had to do so many rosaries, but also pay so much money. And why? Because when the Caesar, I don't know, you have to forgive me since I've had COVID, I know what I want to say. Constantine, when he converted, well, supposedly he looked up and saw a cross in the sky and said, oh boy, I need to be a Christian. So he lined up all his troops, took an olive branch, we're told, and as they marched by, he flung it at them, baptizing all his troops into the church, or into the Catholic Church. So he said, okay, you're going to be my church, but I'm not paying you. You've got to raise your own money. So they had infant baptism come about within just a few years, and confessional, and all of that was bringing in money. So now the word Christian was not a good term. It was a very derogatory term. So as I said, there's two ways to look at it. One way is, Paul, you've almost persuaded me to be a Christian, or Paul, you've almost persuaded me to be a Christian. We don't know which way it went, but we do know the word key is almost. Almost sends people to hell.
Either way, it's pitiful. Either way, it's pitiful.
Either way, he wasn't saved. And there's nothing in the Bible that says he got saved. And I love Paul's response to that. Not only almost, but altogether. I wish everybody here, and he's talking to who? He's talking to the king. He's talking to all of the, you remember it read all of the major citizens. I want you all to become a Christian and be like me, except what? Yeah, I don't want you in chains. I want you all free. And that's when they said, okay, we're heading up. So the king rose up, the governor, Bernice, and the king says, you know, I would have let him go free, but he appealed to Caesar, and there's nothing I can do about it. Is that the truth? Well, I don't know. I think the king could have released him. Said, hey, Paul, you just take back your appeal. We're going to let you go. Don't know. Pure.
If he had done that, then that would have kind of negate God telling him that I'm going to be sending you to Rome.
Well, that's true. But if he would have done that, he could have had a riot on his hands.
Yeah, true.
And that's one of the things that all of the leaders, the Romans and those put in authority, tried to avoid, was an insurrection. Because if Rome heard that there was an insurrection in Jerusalem, their policy was they just flood it with troops and wipe everybody out. Men, women, boys, girls, babies, they kill everybody. And that's how they put down an insurrection.
King's gone, governor's gone,
Yeah.
new people.
Yeah. Just kills everybody, starts over with new people. So that probably was in his mind too, because we do know that that was in the mind of a few of the people that we'd read about in Acts that dealt with Paul. So next week we will do 27, and let's see. Yep. And then the week after that. Good. Okay. Well, I'll be at Bethlehem the next 2 weeks, so pray for me. Their pastor's on vacation. And he just started a Sunday evening service, so I get to preach Sunday morning and Sunday evening. I don't know how many people are going to show up when the pastor's gone, but traditionally when the pastor's gone, it cuts whoever comes about halfway. So I think this is neat. Paul did a good job, and one of these days, I hope the church gets raptured and I don't have to die, but if I die, I'm going to want to talk to Paul. Some of the things he went through. Fine man of God. And we've had many like him throughout the centuries. And we're losing them right and left these days. One of the men that I miss is Brother Marshall. I met him when I came up at Berean to be voted on as the Director of Missions. And if you remember, there was about, if I remember correctly, 87 people there that wanted to vote, but somebody only did a motion that only the executive board members could vote, which I think was 33. And they all went into a room to vote, and the sanctuary was people were mad and angry, and Brother Marshall got up with his walker and he pushed it to the front of the sanctuary and said, let's just sing praises and praise God. and it calmed everybody down. And I had that's the major thing. I mean, we talked, but he was a man of God too.
He's an interesting man, Brother Marshall was. He, when I first was asked by the association to take on the task of the multi-purpose building, he was one of my biggest critics. And when the building was done, he paid me some of the greatest compliments of anyone in the association. So,
Yeah, he was a good man, and
yes, he was.
I just know that, that time and one other, we used to, when I made my rounds and we went to Bethel, to Berean, he was there and we would talk a little. Good man.
He supplied it for us several times here too.
Huh, neat.
And he's an interesting speaker.
Okay, well, who wants to close us in prayer tonight?
You're looking way forward at stage fright.
It's called voluntold.
I just love being a young pup around.
Well, you gotta learn somehow.
Listen, you should saw me on that pole.
You want to get up there and pray?
No, I'll just stay there.
Okay.
Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to come to church and praise you here, Lord. And, I thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, that gave his life on the cross for my sins. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
You all have a good week.